In this episode of Growing a Sense of Self Through Self-Defense, I'm going to talk about emotions, morality, and the roots of evil. Now imagine you were working on a goal for a fairly long time, applying yourself, and you achieved that goal, and you got whatever you were seeking to gain. What would be your response to that, your reaction to that? I mean, there may be multiple ones, but one for sure would be joy. That's a universal kind of response to that setup. And it's not something you had to think about, well, maybe I should be happy if this happens. It would just be there. Our emotions are physiologically wired. They're instinctual. They carry no moral value. Just like being hungry is not a moral state, or being satiated is not a moral state. It just is, given conditions. And the relationship between emotions and morality. Morality is a set of principles concerning the goodness or rightness or right or wrongness of behaviors. So that's a moral thing, where emotions are amoral. They have no morality associated with them directly. So how do these two things relate? Well, they relate through the sense of self. That's the underpinning for both. So I did talk in an earlier episode about morality and the sense of self. That I gave a couple examples of how we can sort of rule on what morality is good or not. Everybody has a morality, whether or not it's what we would consider, outsiders consider a good morality or not. Well, there's different kind of yardsticks, and it's hard to apply them. Let me suggest one to apply is health. A choice is a good moral choice if it leads to greater health. Health is a good. Whether that health is for the individual or the health is for others, that you can trade off. If it's good for me, not so much for you, then you can say, well, where is the greater health involved? But it's wrapped around the health, getting healthier health for the individual, making the choice, or others that are affected by the choice. That you would say that is a morally good choice if it leads to greater health. And the inverse if it doesn't. And our sense of self is a measure, the strength of our sense of self is a measure of our holistic health. It's a physical, emotional, spiritual, emotional measure. You can see the traits of a strong sense of self, the characteristics, and a weak sense of self. So you can sort of get a good idea on a measurement of a person's, your own sense of self, how strong or weak it is. And we base our choices in life primarily on our needs. Well, we also have our wants and desires, but the most important and most fundamental is our needs. If we're not getting our needs met, we can't be healthy. You have your survival needs and you have your security needs, but then you have, beyond those, your self-esteem and self-love needs, and then the esteem and love of others, the communal needs. You get stuck at the self-esteem and self-love, then you can't really accept the esteem and love of others, so you get blocked from the communal needs being met. So when we make choices out of scarcity as opposed to out of plenty, we have a low sense of self. We're focused on getting these needs met for self-love and self-esteem, and our choices are for satisfying those. And the benefit or the health for others is less so. We're operating out of more unhealthiness, so our moral choices would tend to be, likely to be, less healthy than if we were operating from plenty. We'd have these needs met, these other needs met coming in. So morality and the sense of self, morality, and if we call it a good morality, it's associated strongly, it correlates strongly with a strong sense of self. So those two, morality springs from the sense of self, how we see ourselves, what we think of ourselves, what we feel about ourselves. Now, how do emotions relate to the sense of self? Well, emotions are perceptions regarding our needs, wants, and desires. Are those needs, wants, and desires satisfied, like the joy you felt from working hard to achieving a goal and achieving it? Are those desires, needs, goals met, or are threatened or lost, we have different responses, whether it's fear or anger or sadness, but they revolve around what our needs, wants, desires are, and most preeminent among those is needs. If you're not getting your needs met, you can't be healthy. So the sense of self as a measure of holistic health identifies sort of the level of where you are with your needs. A low sense of self is I'm needy at the level of self-love, self-esteem. A stronger sense of self is not only is that that need is being met, but the ones beyond that of love and esteem of others I can accept because I get that they are deserved, they are earned. Because that's how I feel about myself and I can extend it. So it's not only the health or our needs, wants, and desires, primarily needs, that the sense of self is making a statement about, and emotions are going to relate to that. The other piece of emotions is the perceptions. The perceptions regarding these needs being met, threatened, or lost. And our perceptions, they're determined by, they determine our reality, but they are directed by our sense of self. It's where we focus our sense of self. Our perceptions. Our sense of self determines that. So neediness, we're going to be looking for things to meet, satisfy our needs, and that's where our perceptions will go. And let me give a couple examples that ties these things together. The perceptions with the emotions and the morality around that, and our sense of self. So imagine a case where you have a very good friend. Maybe you think of him as that person as your best friend or one of your best friends. And you spend time together almost every day, certainly every week. And the person then tells you they just have an opportunity they're going to take to move away, like 1,000 miles or more away, for whether it's a job or a relationship or something, but something that's very positive for them, or they see as very positive for them. Now, if you're on a low sense of self side, what you see is from your perspective, your neediness, and what you're seeing is there's a person who's important to you, who gives you some sense of being good or okay, strokes, that you're now going to lose. And this is a sad thing, that this person is moving away, because you're coming at it from a self-absorbed perspective, and you see it as your loss, not their gain. A person with a strong sense of self will see it as their gain. This is a wonderful opportunity. Seems to be great, whether it's the person you're going to go to be with or the job opportunity you've been working towards. This is wonderful. Yes, we will spend less time together, but there'll be people moving, taking more of my life, taking more time in my life, and new people that you'll be meeting. This is a good thing, and they can celebrate in that. So you can sort of see which one you would consider a better, higher moral choice in terms of reaction. It was the same data perceived differently, as a loss in the one case, as a gain for the other person, loss for me or gain for them, depending on the strength of one's sense of self. And the emotions were different growing out of that, because the perception of I'm thinking I'm losing something with a low sense of self, a need, love of others, esteem of others, or I'm looking at, no, this person's the center of their own universe, says this is a good for them. If this is a good thing for them, then it's a good thing for me too, because I find joy in their existence. I love who they are. This is a good thing. Let me get a second example. Consider a young couple, married couple. They're in their late 20s, been married for several years, and the wife is going around telling their mutual friends that they're wanting to start a family. She wants to have a baby. And they've been trying for several months, and she misses a period. So she's kind of excited about it. She gets this home pregnancy kit and waits for her husband to be home, and they look at it together, and the kit indicates that she's pregnant. So she's got this great joy and all excited about it. And husband's response, he's kind of like shocked and stunned and almost like disbelieving. So let me read the instructions again. Did we do this right? Let me look at the results again. And his face grows long, and no, we misread this. You're not pregnant. And the wife goes from this high to this low. She loved the concept of being pregnant, and she's angry about, sad about, hates the state that she's not pregnant. Now, cutscene. I want to give the backstories. So the husband never wanted to have a baby. He's committed to his job, committed to his work. He doesn't want the responsibilities associated with being a father. He doesn't think his wife would be a good mother. He doesn't think she's a good wife. He actually was thinking about, well, I want to be divorcing her. He thinks that she's wanting the baby as a way to keep them together. He had been undermining the opportunity, the possibility of getting pregnant by scheduling time to be out of town for work when she was at her most fertile time of the month. And he would do things like wear tight-fitting workout clothes when he would exercise and try to generate a lot of heat in his groin area and try to kill the sperm and be less fertile, so to reduce the likelihood of getting pregnant. And then when he was looking at the pregnancy test, he wasn't honest with her. The instructions and the test results did indeed indicate she was pregnant, and he told her otherwise. And the reason he did was to keep her from telling their friends that she was pregnant, to buy some time to maybe figure out a way through food or drink or drugs or activity or something that would cause her to lose her pregnancy. Now, what do you think of the moral moral values of the man and the choices he was making? Now, the backstory for the woman. Now, they got married at a very early age, early 20s. And it was shortly after the husband came into a great deal of money through inheritance. He inherited a family business. It was a very successful one. So he had a high income in addition to this wealth that he came into. And he didn't have a prenuptial agreement or anything like that. She was not happy in her marriage either. And she had sort of thought she was kind of planning on getting a divorce or asking for a divorce. She had had several affairs. It wasn't the baby she was wanting for the baby's sake or even to be a mom, but she saw the baby as an opportunity to get regular child support payments for 18 years or something in addition to whatever alimony she would get as a result of her divorce. And she had been telling friends, their mutual friends, about trying to have a baby in an attempt to get them to put pressure on her husband to be more focused, more serious about getting pregnant. I mean, he told her he wanted to have a baby, but that was more to keep her from being angry with him while he did this undercutting the possibility. So what's your judgment on the strength of the moral choices, the goodness of the moral choices that the wife was making? Now, we talked in an earlier episode on the goodness of morality. What is the basis that you can say of this morality? Everybody has a morality, which is a good one, which is a not so good one. And it's hard to find a yardstick by which you can measure morality. The ones we talked about, the commonly known ones, all have shortcomings when you're trying to apply limitations. And let me suggest one that I didn't talk about in that episode, and that is using health. If you make a choice that improves your personal health or the health of others, that's a good moral choice. If you make a choice that hurts the health of others or yourself, that's a poor moral choice. And that's health in a holistic sense, not just physical health, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. So if we look at these two individuals, and we can look and say, I think we're agreeing that those weren't very good moral choices. The choices they were making were not something we would admire. Well, maybe some people might admire, but maybe we wouldn't admire those people. So let's look, if that's the case, based on what has been said in an earlier episode, that morality, and in this one, morality and the strength of the sense of self have a strong correlation. The goodness of morality and the strength of a sense of self have a strong correlation. Let's think about, based on actions that these people took, words that they said, things that they did, what does that reveal about the strength of the sense of self? And remember, episode C-27, in everything you say and everything you do, there is an exposure of the strength of your sense of self. So what do we see in these people? In both of them, there's a general sense of unhappiness. They are secretive. They're not telling what their true motives are. They use language for its emotive value. You know, I want to have children and whatever, and you get connections. Or, yes, I want to have children too, and you don't want to, and you're going to sabotage it. They violate their professed standards, are hypocritical. You see that in their actions. They're drawn to others with a low sense of self. They're drawn to each other. They married. They seek control and power over others. And you do that through, in part, through secrecy. And they are, or by being dishonest, as the man was. And they are passively aggressive. So we see these people making what we would say immoral choices, unhealthy choices. They still experienced emotions. Emotions are wired in all of us. The woman experiencing joy when she thought she was pregnant, and in anger, sadness, hate when she found out she wasn't, mistakenly found out she wasn't, misperceived that. And the husband having the hate that his wife was pregnant. So, based on what we've seen in an earlier episode and the tie with the goodness of morality with the strength of a sense of self, we would expect to see in these people who are making poor moral choices characteristics of a low sense of self. And that's what we saw. So, were these choices, these immoral choices, do they rise to the level of evil? Will we consider them a profound immorality, which is the definition of evil? Some people may say yes, others no, it's not quite to that level. I would reserve evil for something a little bit more extreme. Okay, let's push it to the more extreme and talk about what we would consider evil. Right? Mass murderer, a serial rapist, a pedophile, a tyrant who's seeking control and power over the people of his nation. And we can potentially agree that all of those are profoundly immoral, all of those are evil acts. Now think of a person with a strong sense of self, with the traits of a strong sense of self, and I'm going to attach the link to the list of the strong and weak sense of self, high and low, to this video. A person with a strong sense of self is not capable of making those types of choices, of acting in ways that are we would then say, oh, that was an evil act. That's not possible. They have too many blockers as part of their characteristics. Now, for conscience, I mean, maybe I hit a button by mistake or something and blew up, set off a bomb someplace, and you say, oh, that was evil. Well, it wasn't a choice that was made. So, conscious choices to cause harm for self or others, people with a strong sense of self don't make those choices. People with a low sense of self, they don't have blockers. The closest thing they have to a blocker is, well, I don't want to be disavowed by people who then see me as immoral or evil or something. But that's okay if that's to them. They have an us and them mentality. And if they have enough of us, similarly low sense of self people around them, they're okay ostracizing the them and not getting support from the them because they have the us. So even that's not really a blocker. It's not a full blocker. So it doesn't compel, a low sense of self does not compel evil acts, evil choices to be made. But it doesn't have roadblocks that preclude it. It does enable it. Think of a child, a boy, who is sexually molested repeatedly, maybe even starting as a baby. That boy can grow up to become a pedophile. It's a very common thing. A pedophile's history is they were sexually molested as a child or abused in some other way. The victim becomes the victimizer. What was a sense of powerlessness, now they want to put that on others for them to have a sense of power. Think of a child who is severely whipped until they don't show any response to it. So maybe you get a first couple of strikes and they cry or scream. You will be whipped until you stop. This was Adolf Hitler's childhood. They can grow to become brutal, murderous dictators of a country. Think of a girl who is neglected. Never had a sense of unconditional love growing up. Can grow up to be, or especially as a child, can grow up to be an uncaring adult, uncaring of others because she's uncaring of self. Can become a mass murderer. Evil is rooted in unhealthiness. The sense of self describes holistic health. Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. If we want to deal with evil in the world, we have to deal with our health. So the seeds for evil are planted when our sense of self is being formed in our infancy. If we do not have our physiology honored as human beings, our wiring is not honored, somebody was screwing with Mother Nature, these seeds will be planted. To the extent that they grow, well, that depends on how unhealthy that early childhood is. How long, through what childhood, through into adulthood, depends on the person, the personality. So a person who has a low sense of self, they are uncaring, and they may seek to inflict or inject unhealth. If they're an extrovert, they'll do it to others. If they're an introvert, they'll do it to themselves. Self-abuse, maybe suicide. To roll back evil, we have to roll back or address the epidemic of low sense of self. We have to raise our collective sense of self as individuals, helping where we can others, or motivating, inspiring, informing. Because you all can always, no matter the strength of your sense of self, it can always be stronger. And the stronger it is, the better life is, the healthier one is. It's a good thing to do at whatever stage you're at. It's a non-stop thing, lifelong. And critically important, to raise our children that way, align with their nature. That we do things where we avoid drug childbirth. We do in-arms experience of the child. We extended breast nurturing. We don't let babies cry it out. We do shared sleep. We don't drop siblings on top of one another such that the earlier sibling didn't have a chance to progress through their first separation individuation phase. We honor what nature intended us to honor. We honor our nature. We honor the nature of the child. That's where true holistic health lies. So let's work together as we raise our collective self. So we roll back our collective sense of self. We roll back evil or immorality more generally in the world. We raise our collective health. We raise the goodness of our collective morality. This is a most noble effort. And I urge you to join me in it. Thank you for your time. Kamsahamnida. Toodles.